he was like, I'm thinking, should I do it or not?
He's going into
Okay, Vino Madonai Eloheinu Aleinu Maaseh Yadeinu Konei Naleinu Maaseh Yadeinu Koneu. I'd like to thank the Picasso family for graciously opening up their home to Shir in North Woodmere. And Bezrat Hashem, I'll try to give advance notice when I come here so we can have other shiurim in other people's houses, okay? I want to apologize ahead of time. It's Thursday night. I know it's a tough night to do a shiur because people are preparing for Shabbat. But that was the only time I had available, at least their week. I might have some availability on Sunday. If anybody's interested, let me know afterwards. Okay, so I'd like to discuss a little bit about the end of last week's parasha, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Perashat Terumah. For people who've been to my class before, or people who haven't been to my class before, the way I try to look at the parasha and you see what does it mean for me today? If I read anything in the Torah and the Tanakh, and I can't figure out a meaning for me today, then I need to read it again and learn it again because it's something that we're missing. There are things going on in the world right now, a lot of events, and we have to look and see how the parasha is speaking to us about those events. I gave a class last Shabbat in Boca Raton. And one of the things I discussed there, which I think illustrates this point, and I've discussed it in previous classes, is that we have a concept of histakel be'oraita ubara alma, that God looked into the Torah and created the world. So on a simple level, we think about that and we say, well, if a person wants to have a building, wants to build a building, the first thing you have to do is get an architect. Get an architect, draw up the plans, then you get an engineer, and then you actually do construction. You don't do construction before you have an architect design the building. So one can understand that the Torah is like the architecture, is the architectural plans for the world. That's a very superficial understanding of that. We say in the Tefillah, Hamhadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit. What does that mean? Hamhadesh, that God renews, b'chol yom, every day, tamid, which is always, every minute, right? B'chol yom would be every day. It could be once a day. B'chol yom tamid is always, right? Ma'aseh breshit. What is ma'aseh breshit? When we say the word ma'aseh, the words ma'aseh breshit, the creation of the world. Ma'aseh breshit is the creation of the world. Okay, let's understand that. We're in the year 5784. So that means that the world was created according to our faith 5,784 years ago. Sorry? 5,785. You're right. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for the correction. 5,785 years ago. Okay? So now let's understand that, right? So what does it mean, Hamhadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit?
that every day the world is renewed constantly.
Correct, which means the world is renewed constantly. So we understand that there's a shefa, an abundance, a connection that Hashem makes to the world of what's called kiyum, which is existence. If that shefa was removed, what would happen to the world? It would cease to exist, like a dream ceases to exist, right? So that shefa is always there between Hashem and the world. And if that shefa was removed, the world ceases to exist. So that continuing shefa is what? Hamhadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh breshit. But another way to understand that, histakel be'oraita ubara alma. So what do we understand that? He looked into the Torah and he created the world. No. He looks into the Torah and he creates the world, which means when we look at the Torah, we can understand what's going on in the world right now. Okay? The Ramban, the Nachmanides, on his Perush in the Torah, early on in Breshit, I think it's where the Torah says, Zeh Sefer Toledot Adam. This is the book of the generations of man, if we translate that literally. If I'm not mistaken, the Ramban over there says that the world was created in 6 days, yes? And each day corresponds to a millennium of the world, which means if you look at the first day, which is from the Yom Echad, that corresponds to the first 1,000 years of the world. Yom Sheni, what was created on the second day, that corresponds to the next 1,000 years of the world. Yom Shlishi, right? And then he shows how that works, meaning that you could look into the first 6 days of creation in Breshit, Maaseh Breshit, and there you're going to see hints for everything that's going to happen in the corresponding millennium for that one day. He also writes in another one of his Sfarim, not in his Perashat Terumah, that he writes that basically there's a discussion in the Talmud of how many books there are in the Torah. Listen, rabbis in the Talmud disagree about lots of things, right? The accepted opinion is how many books are there in the Torah? 5. That's why it's called a Chumash. What is Chumash? From the language of Hamesh. But there's another opinion brought in the Talmud that there are 7 books of the Torah. Where do we get 7?
There's a pasuk.
2 Pesukim actually. Vayibin so Aaron vayom Moshe. Kuma, right? And then it says Uvnucho Yomar, right? Those 2 Pesukim, if you look at them, they have nunim in front and back that are upside down. And the Gemara says that is a Sefer Bifnei Atzmo. That is a book to itself, which means those two Pesukim correspond to a book of its own. So that means Bemidbar, according to that opinion, is divided into 3 books. All the Pesukim up into the first one of those 2 Pesukim, those 2 Pesukim, and all the Pesukim after. So how many are there? 7. And they bring a pasuk, Chatzeva Amudea Shiv'a, that the foundations were laid with 7. So that's a pasuk that's brought. So there's a machloket in the Talmud, whether it's 5 or 7. The accepted opinion is there are 5. That's why we call it a chumash. The Ramban has a different opinion. The Ramban says there aren't 5 and there aren't 7. There are 6. Where does he get that from? We said in Breshit, after you finish Shabbat, then what happens? Zeh Sefer Toledot HaAdam. Oh, it's the beginning of a new book, which means everything on Breshit up until Zeh Sefer Toledot HaAdam, that's 1 book. From Zeh Sefer Toledot HaAdam until the end of Breshit is the 2nd book. Shmot is the 3rd. Vayikra is the 4th. Bemidbar is the 5th. And Devarim is the 6th. And then he says, interesting, that the parashot are 10. In each one of them, Vizot HaBracha has no Shabbat to it, so it's not counted. And he shows that not only is the Torah telling you for the first 1,000 years of world history, that corresponds to the beginning up until Zeh Sefer. And then from Zeh Sefer Toledot Hadam all the way to the end of Breshit is the 2nd millennia of the world. Shmot corresponds to the 6th. But not only that, each one of the parashot corresponds to 100 years, which means you can find not just generalities, but you could narrow down what happened in the year 5,000 to 5,100. You look in Parashat Devarim. What happened in the year 5,100 to 5,200? You look in Parashat Va'etchanan. And the Gaon of Vilna, because Ramban died in around the turn of the 5,000, 5,050 or something like that. So the Gaon of Vilna continued and he showed how 51, 52, 53, how those corresponded. So they asked the Gaon, okay, since you are an important person in this century, please tell us where your name appears in the parasha. His name was Eliyahu. That was his name. So what parasha was the Vilna Gaon living in? He was living in Parashat Ki Tetzeh. And what does it say in Ki Tetzeh at the end? Second. Even Shelema Vatzedek. Even Shelema. Eliyahu ben Shlomo. That's his name. So if you think where we are right now, what parasha are we in right now? No. Okay. Yes. Yeah. In the respect of what I'm talking about, understanding that Devarim corresponds to the 6th millennia where we are now, right? What parasha, since we're in the year 5785, thank you for correcting me, what parasha does that correspond to?
Before Baracha, before Baracha, which one?
It's before Ha'azinu.
Ha'azinu?
Ha'azinu, what is parasha? What's right before Ha'azinu? Vayelech. Nitzavim and Vayelech are together, and each one is very short, so they correspond each to 50 years. Nitzavim and Vayelech together is 100 years. And what is the topic that is discussed in Parashat Nitzavim and Vayelech? I know it was a little while ago. It's hard to remember that far back. If you had to pick a category, what does those two parashot discuss? Teshuvah. Teshuvah, repentance. All of Dvarim is a rebuke. But Nitzavim and Vayelech are specifically discussing Teshuvah, the Shav. It's right, Veshav. It talks about returning, and what in the past, this century, shall we say, has happened more than arguably any other time in Jewish history. Teshuvah, and for hundreds and thousands of years, parents taught their children. Yes, ask your father, and he will tell you. Ask your grandfather, and he will give you the answer. But we have a generation or two where what's happening? It's the opposite. The parents are asking the children. Why? Because of the concept of the teshuvah. So, and this is never really happened in Jewish history before, like to this level. It's not Lubavitch. Lubavitch did a wonderful job of Kiruv, but it's not Lubavitch. There are many people, including yours truly, that were not brought up observant. So this a massive teshuvah movement, and that corresponds to Parashat Nitzavim and Vayelech perfectly. So we're in and there's, if you think about it, there's not that much time left, right? You have, Ha'azinu and Vezot HaBracha. That's it. That's the end of the show. What's that? Okay, so anxiety. Why anxiety? Shouldn't be anxiety. It should be excitement.
215, not 45. No, it's to the 6th millennium.
Yeah. Oh, 85, right? Yeah. We're 85 right now, not 75.
Okay, so
578.
Okay, let me ask a question. We're in the year 5785, yes?
Right.
Is that according to all opinions?
No. Of course not.
If I ask that question, the answer is always going to be no. There's machloket, yes? Okay, so what are the other opinions? So the fact that we're in the year 5785 is based on Rashi. Rashi says that basically the way he calculates when Yetziat Mitzrayim was is the year 2448. The Ramban says no, because we have a stira in two pesukim, discrepancy between two verses. Actually, three different things. By Avraham Avinu, how many years were we supposed to be in Egypt?
400.
400. Arba me'ot shana, it says. He told your children will be slaves for 400 years, right? When they're leaving Egypt, how many, and the Torah is summarizing how many years they were slaves. What does it say? No. 430. Really, they were there for 210 years. And how many years were there actually was slavery?
83 or
86. 83, 86. No, it's 86, because the birth of Miriam is when the slavery started. So they're only slaves for 86 years. So it's either 210, or is it 430 or 400? I mean, that's just, let's look at the 430. I mean, you could say, so Rashi calculates the 400 from where? From the birth of Isaac. How does that work?
From the time that Hashem said it's going to happen, it started.
Okay, but God said you're going to be slaves in a land that is not yours for 400 years.
He was in Canaan, it wasn't his.
Very good. Yadoa teda ki ger yezaracha be'eretz lo lahem, the pasuk says, right? Translated, you shall surely know that your children will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Canaan was not theirs. When Abraham was given that prophecy when he was 70 years old, that's before Lech Lecha, because at Lech Lecha he's actually 75. 5. Okay? Everybody agrees, even the Ramban, that the order of Lech Lecha is out of order. The Brit Ben Abitarim is first. That's at 70. Then he goes back to Haran. He brings his wife and his family. Lech Lecha comes to the land of Israel at 75. But he came first alone when he was 70. And that's the Brit Ben Abitarim. When he's told, God tells him, you're going to inherit this land. And he asks, how do I know I'm going to inherit the land? And God chose the parts, the animals, the 3 different animals, and the 4th one that was not split, yes? And he tells them that your children are going to be slaves, going to be strangers in a land that is not theirs. When does that start? That starts with the birth of Isaac. Why? Because Isaac is his child, yes. A lot of information. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I just want to clear this. So the land that's not yours, that's Israel.
Canaan, yeah, Israel.
So that's why all the Muslims probably know this.
No. Hold on. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Okay? First, since you brought it up, let's talk about it, okay?
At the time, it wasn't.
Okay. The land of Israel, Canaan, belonged before Abraham was born. Okay? Who was the land of Canaan supposed to belong to? I'll give you a hint. It's not Canaan.
Abraham?
No, before Abraham was born. I mean, God knows everything, right? But before Abraham was born, when was the world divided first? Where? After the Mabul. After the Mabul, what happens? Noah has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yefet, right? Yefet goes to Europe, north, right? Ham goes to Africa. Shem is supposed to be in the Middle East. Very straightforward, yes? That's how the land was divided. Okay, that's why we come to class, so we can learn. Okay, and you're at questions, so that's why we're going to answer it. So now what happens? That was great, except one of the 3 brothers didn't follow the plan. Which one? Ham didn't follow the plan. So what did he do? He conquered Canaan. And which one of Ham's sons conquered Canaan? Canaan. And that's why it's called Eretz Canaan. And the Canaanite nations occupied that land, but it did not belong to Canaan, because Canaan is a descendant of Ham, and Ham belongs in Africa. So even the original Canaanites, when they conquered that land, were usurpers. So God told Abraham, by the way, don't touch that right now. Lo shalem avon ha'emoriyad hena. Leave it alone. This is not going to be for you to deal with. Who's going to deal with this? Your great-great-grandchildren. They're going to come into the land of Canaan after they are taken out of Egypt, of course, a 40-year detour because of the Meraglim, and they're going to give the Canaanites a choice. The choice is leave or die. That's the choice. No, very important. The Torah says, Lo tehayek kol neshama. How many Canaanites living in the land of Israel were allowed to, as far as the Torah is concerned, what were the Jewish people supposed to do? Anyone who didn't leave was supposed to be killed. Very simple. Canaanites living outside the land of Israel, they didn't have to be killed. But the ones living in the land of Israel were given a choice. Before Joshua started conquering, he said, we're coming in, get out, or it's over. No teshuvah. Out they go. The teshuvah is to leave.
Okay, so
That's the teshuvah, is to leave. Let's understand this, okay? Let's understand this. This is much more applicable, unfortunately, in New York than it is in Florida. You own a property in New York, okay? But you don't live there. And some people just move in. They break in the door, they change the locks, they move in. They got no lease, they got no nothing. In Florida, they're out in 3 days. The sheriff comes, they don't have a lease, they have no proof, out in 3 days. Someone doesn't pay rent in Florida, they're out in 30 days. None of this nonsense, okay? It's your property. So here we have Canaan coming into the land of Shem. What's the teshuvah? I'm so sorry that I took this land, but I want to stay? No. Get out. It's not your house. It belongs to the descendant of Shem. And God specifically is giving it to which descendant of Shem? Avraham.
Okay, so they are the people of Abraham also.
Who? Oh, good. Oh, I love it. This is even better than I could prepare, but this is even better.
It's getting better.
This is even better. Phenomenal question. They are also descendants of, they claim they're descendants of Yishmael, who's a descendant of Abraham. So let's look carefully. What does the Torah say? Kiger ye zaracha. What's the word there? Zaracha, which means your seed. Okay, now, is Yishmael, as far as the Torah is concerned, the seed? Forget about what the Arabs say. Is Yishmael, as far as the Torah is concerned, the seed of Abraham?
Father's side.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you no.
why not?
Can anybody tell me how we know that?
Because
He's a
God
son.
said so.
Okay, where did he say it?
He told,
One day Ishmael is going to come to you as a Jew and say, please explain to me why we're not entitled to half the land of Israel since we are descendants of Abraham. We have to be able to answer that question.
because when
Yes.
Hashem told Abraham to bring his son as a sacrifice, he was very specific about which son.
Okay, so what? Yitzchak was supposed to be sacrificed. That means he gets the land and not Yishmael?
When he calls him his offspring, his only.
The pasuk. Ki be Yitzchak yikare lecha zara. Translated. Because in Isaac will be called your seed. That's what the Torah says. That's what God says to Avraham Avinu. In Isaac will be your seed. So what does that mean? First and foremost, not Ishmael. He's not considered to be the seed of Abraham. I'm not saying he's not the son of Abraham. He is the son of Abraham. But as far as the Torah is concerned, as far as God is concerned, spiritually, he is not the seed of Abraham. And what about, now you can ask the next question. So continue on with question. So I just told you about Ishmael. Now what about another one you have to ask about? That even has a more legitimate claim. Esav. Be Yitzchak. What is Be Yitzchak? This says in the Gemara flat out. What is Be Yitzchak? Not all of Isaac. Which means Esav is not the seed of Abraham. Only Jacob. Pasuk. Ki be Yitzchak yikare. In Isaac will your seed be called. What does that mean? That no one else can claim to be the seed of Abraham except the descendants of Jacob. Isaac and Jacob and his descendants.
So we should quote these things.
We should, but first we have to know them, right?
You know how they, choose whatever they want the world to know? Why can't we?
Yeah, great. I mean, they have 28 countries they can live in. Let them live in any one of them. They can choose. Okay? All right, so since we're on this topic, this is really what I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure we're going to get to Perashat Terumah, but okay, we'll make that up maybe a different time. What does the Torah say to do about these problems? I mean, it would be nice if we look in the Torah and see, what does the Torah say? Bibi Netanyahu, with all due respect, I don't think he opens up the Chumash and says, let me see, what does God say we should do here? Ben Gurion certainly did not open up a Chumash and say, let's see what God wants to do after he conquered Jerusalem. They didn't do that. What does our Torah tell us? What does it say in last week's parasha at the end? First it says, there will not be any miscarriages or barren women in your land. When the Jewish people go into the land of Israel, as long as they behave themselves, there's a bracha. What's the bracha? No miscarriages. That's all work and no result. If God wants us to be fruitful and multiply and fill the land up with Jewish people, miscarriages are counterproductive. Right? Akara, a barren woman, what does that mean? That means there's no children from her. So God's telling us, when you go into the land of Israel, assuming you follow the plan, there will be no miscarriages, and there will be no barren women. And mispar yamecha amaleh, the amount of your days will be filled. And there's a whole discussion in the Talmud. What does this mean? Because there's a king, his name was Menashe, evil king. He basically was the grandson of Yishaya Hanavi. And what did Menashe do when he became king? He killed Yishaya Hanavi, his own grandfather. And the Gemara answers why he did it. What did he do? Because there's a discussion in the Talmud based on this pasuk right here. Et mispar yamech amaleh. When a person is born, are they destined to have a certain amount of years alive? And then if they behave themselves and do well, it's extended, which means they could live longer than they're supposed to. Obviously, if a person is not behaving, then they can live shorter. No one disagrees with that, okay? What do you do with a person that commits a capital offense? His life is shortened. He's killed. What is karet? That's a shortening of a person's life from a spiritual point of view. So the shortening, that's straightforward. But what happens if a person is doing good work? Is their life extended longer? Or is it just they fulfill their entire year, which means if they're supposed to live for 70 years and they were supposed to die at 60 because they didn't behave themselves, and when they do teshuvah, what happens? They can live out the full 70. Everybody understand the difference of opinion? Okay, so how does this have anything to do with Menashe? Who is Menashe's father? No, that's his grandfather. Who is Yeshaya's father? Not Yeshaya's father. Son. No. Who was
Yeshaya's
father, king, the righteous king.
Who was Menashe's father? No. Thank you. Chizkiyahu. What happened to Chizkiyahu? Chizkiyahu is a big tzaddik. He made teshuvah massive to the point where every child that was 6 years old knew Mishnah Okatzin. Okay, now where is Okatzin? It's in Taharot, which is the last of the Mishnayot. And Okatzin is one of the most difficult. First of all of Taharot is very, very difficult because it's not tangible, right? If I want to learn about Shabbat, Shabbat is tangible. I understand what Shabbat is. I'm going to rest from creative work. What's creative work? What's considered melacha? What's not considered melacha? Okay? Laws of contracts, pretty straightforward. It's a contract, right? These are pretty straight. Sanhedrin, they're doing Masechet Sanhedrin and Daf Yomi now. Courts, we can understand what a court is. 3 judges, 23 judges, 7. Right? We understand that. Tumah and Tahara, what's that? What does that mean? We have one Masechet of Bavli called Masechet Nida. That's the only Masechet that in Bavli that's from the Seder Taharot. That in and of itself is not an easy Masechet to learn. But there's things that are not nokia today. For instance, Okatzin or other things Bet HaMikdash used to do with Tumah and Tahara. They have no shayachut to today. So children in the time of Chizkiah knew the Mishnayot, Okatzin even, which is tremendous. So tremendous amount of learning. He destroyed all the bamot of his father, Achaz. He destroyed all the bamot, all the false altars that were built throughout all of the land of Israel. So he did tremendous teshuvah. But he made one mistake.
He didn't sing to Hashem.
Okay, that is a mistake, but that's another conversation for another day.
He didn't want to have kids.
Yeah. He didn't want to have children. Why not? Because he knew that his son was going to be a Rasha. He said to himself, why am I going to bring Rasha to the world? I'm not going to have children. So the prophet comes to him because he was sick. He got sick and he couldn't understand why he was sick. And the prophet comes to him and says, by the way, the prophet was a palliative care doctor, and basically tells him, you're going to die. You're done. That's it. You're finished. It's over. Pack your bags. And he's like incredulous. Why? What did I do wrong? I mean, all this tremendous stuff I did. He made some other mistakes, but this is the big one. And the prophet says, because you're not having children. So his answer is, but he's going to be a Rasha. And the prophet says, and that is your business. Pruvu milu ta'aretz doesn't say, but if you're going to have a rasha, you're patur. Doesn't say that. Nowhere. You have, and Chizkiyahu, right away, what does he do? He turns to the wall and he prays. As the prophet is walking out, he's told to go back and tell Chizkiyahu he's got himself another 15 years. And in those 15 years, who was born? Menashe. What's that?
Is it a twin or is it another brother?
I don't know if there's another brother. It could be vaguely remembering.
He was walking with both.
Yeah. But not germane to what we're talking about now, but could be. Okay? So, and this Menashe, so what happened was, who is this prophet, by the way? Yishaya. So Yishaya recognized that Chizkiyahu had a legitimate concern, right? So what did he do? He said, okay, I'm going to give you my daughter as a wife. You'll marry her. And hopefully, given the fact that you're a tzaddik and she's the daughter of a prophet, we'll be able to maybe change this whole Menashe thing and maybe it won't be such a rasha. So the Gemara discusses and said, why did Menashe kill Chizkiyahu? Kill Yishaya? Because he said Yishaya spoke against the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. How? From this pasuk. Et mispar yamecha amaleh. He understood that what? That this means that you can't have an extension on your life. A person is living for a certain amount of years, and they can only fulfill the amount of years they're supposed to have. So when Yishaya came and said, you are going to die, there's no way that was a prophecy from God, according to Menashe. And what's the punishment of a Navi Sheker? Death.
He was knowledgeable in Torah.
Yes.
That's Rasha.
Yes. All the big Rishayim are always knowledgeable in the Torah. Unbelievable. In 15 years, Chizkiyahu taught him a lot, no? Tried to protect him, give him Torah so he'd know what to do, right?
How Torah didn't save him from being Rasha if he knew so much Torah?
Another great question. Boy, we can go on just the questions.
I think they were just in such
What
a
was-
level that we don't understand.
Okay, but he's asking a valid question.
But the law wasn't full.
If he's learning, if he knows Torah to this level, I mean, this is impressive.
Father said,
For Rasha Gadol, I'm sorry, this is impressive. He didn't realize if there's another opinion, and the other opinion is the correct opinion. There's a machlok in the Talmud, right? The opinion that he had, that he accepted, was the wrong one. No, a person's life can be extended. Where do we learn it from? We learn it from Yeshaya. Okay, so how is it possible that a person can study Torah and be Rasha? And what is the antidote for the Yetzer Hara? The Torah. Why didn't the antidote work? That's his legitimate question. Good question. Legitimate question. Anybody have an answer? No. I mean, he's already a Talmid Chacham if he's able to know to this level.
"If the Agava can buy
That if a person has Ga'ava, yeah, then they don't really learn Torah. It can't retain the Torah. The Ga'ava prevents the utensil from being filled.
Did he, okay, knowing is one thing, but did he keep it or apply it?
Okay, that's good. Very, very good. There are people who are knowledgeable in the Torah. You know, my computer is very knowledgeable in the Torah. I mean, I could look up anything in Safari and find it in 3 seconds. I could ask Dr. Google a question. He's going to give me the answer. You know, soon with AI, we're not going to need rabbis. Hey, Rabbi AI, please give me the answer to X, Y, Z. And he's going to spit out all the answers. There's opinion here, there's opinion there, there's this about looking. That's it. It's going to be easy, right? But where is the Torah supposed to be?
the actions."
What'd you say? Your heart. That's where the Torah is supposed to be. What does it say in Perashat Terumah? Me'et kol ish asher yidevenu libo. Everybody can give a donation, but donations are supposed to come from the lev. Right? What does the lev mean? Lev is heart, is emotion. A person is supposed to show love. How does one show love? By giving. How does one show love of God? By giving. Now, God doesn't need because he's got everything. He owns everything. But when you have a poor person coming, who God purposely made that person poor, right? We know wealth or riches is in the hands of God, yes? That person has a legitimate complaint against God. In Hebrew, we say, zelo fair. Translated, it's not fair. Right? So why is the person ashir? Why does God give this one 10 million and this one 0 million? Why does he do that? He can't match it up a little bit. He can't be like an ultimate Democrat where everybody should be equal outcomes. That can't be God's picture over here, equal outcomes for everybody. Isn't that nice? Karl Marx? No, Karl Marx was an atheist. That's not God's world. God's world is there are ashir, and God's world is ani. And why is there ashir, and why is there ani? It's called terumah. So the ashir can give to the ani, and the ani can receive. And who's doing a bigger favor with whom?
Ani.
The ani, the poor person, is doing a bigger favor with the ashir by taking the money than is the ashir who's giving it. Because when the ashir is giving the money, yes, he basically is giving charity, yes? When the ani accepts it, he's giving it. When the ashir gives the money, he's giving the poor person life in this world. But the poor person can take the money and go gamble and all kinds of other avonot, yes? And so he's going to go to hell, even though he's a poor person, but he's taking the money. But the ani is doing a favor with the ashir. Why? Because the ashir is basically receiving chayim in olam hazeh and in olam haba. So greater is the tova that the ani does than with the ashir. Let me make that into a relationship. Who's giving more in the relationship? The man or the woman?
Man gives just a seed.
There's the kavyachol. There are many women that are wealthier than their husbands. I get it. There's the ashir, and there's the ani. Or let's change the words. There's the giver, and then there's the receiver. What did we say? Man gives to his wife. But the wife, by accepting what is given, what does she then do with what's given? She makes it better. He goes out into the field and he basically does shechita on a cow. Okay. And maybe he butchers the cow, all that kind of stuff, cleans it up nicely. In the olden days, the ladies did that anyway, right? Now there's a piece of steak over there. But what's the problem? The guy doesn't know how to cook. He's not Bukhari. He doesn't know how to barbecue. You're going to chew on a raw steak? It's a little dull, right? So the term the Yerushalmi says is, a man brings home wheat kernels. Does the wife serve him wheat kernels on his plate so he can chew on wheat kernels? No. What does she do? She takes the wheat and she makes it into bread. Man gives a woman what's called tipas rucha, a spoiled drop. What does she do with that spoiled drop? She makes a human being. What's that?
He gives raw product.
He gives low level.
She cooks it.
And what does she do? She takes that low level and she makes it into a human being. That's the role of the ani, or the receiver. There's a reason why Chava was separated after to teach this lesson. But who's created first? Adam. Adam had Chava inside had the feminine characteristics, but it was like this, back to back. So like a couple that's going to marital therapy and they can't talk to each other and they can't wink at each other because every single thing they say and every single thing they face is everybody's getting upset about. So what does a good marital therapist do? He takes the chairs, he puts them back to back. Husband sits facing that way, wife sits facing that way. That's how they have a conversation under supervision. Because why? Now nobody's reading faces and things like that, right? Oh, yeah. No one's looking at that, right? And this way they can actually communicate. But back to back is no way to do pru'uvu. That's just not possible. So in order therefore to be pru'uvu, what has to happen? There has to be Now we have an understanding of why man was, there's many reasons, but why man was first created with a side. The word selah does not mean rib only. It also means a side. She was a part of him, but back to back. What did God do? Put him to sleep, removed her, and put her as ezer kenegdo. What does negdo mean? Face to face. Means against him, but it also means face to face. The key about giving has to be lev. If it's not from the lev, then it's just, God doesn't really, it's not his world. Lev, asher yidevenu libo. That's the key for anything that is given. It must be given with the lev. Torah is not for the brain. That's the place where it goes first. If it just stays in the brain, then you have like professors in Tel Aviv that are experts in Talmud, but they live lives of Resha, of evil. They're not Shomer Shabbat. They don't believe in God. Right? The key about learning Torah is supposed to go to the person's heart and change behavior. Okay, 1 second. We're going to get to that. So Menashe, what was the problem? The Torah is called Sam HaChaim, and it's also called Sam HaMavet. I'm a doctor. There are medicines that I prescribe. In the appropriate dose, it will save a person. In an inappropriate dose, it will kill a person. So you understand that just like medicine, refuah, has the ability to heal and has the ability to kill, Torah has the ability to heal and Torah has the ability to kill. So who gets healed by the Torah and who gets killed by the Torah? A person who gets killed by the Torah is a person who has no yirat shamayim. No awe of God. Because then it's just a subject. It's another discipline of knowledge. It's like when you study math, do you have to be a believer in God to understand mathematical concepts? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, you have a lot of scientists that don't believe in God. Torah is the one thing that if a person doesn't have yirat shamayim, it's dangerous for that person. Whereas if he has yirat shamayim or she has yirat shamayim, then it's called samachayim. Then it's the spice of life. It's the medicine of life. And the other thing is, as a person accumulates more and more Torah knowledge, what's supposed to happen? Let's say I have a cup, okay? And I take water. I have my water right here. And I pour water in the cup, okay? I can fill this cup up to the rim. What happens if I keep pouring? It'll overflow and spill on the ground and be wasted, which means the purpose of a cup or a utensil is to hold and receive bracha. Yes? But what happens when the utensil is full? It cannot have any more bracha. So what is a person supposed to do if they want to have more water? They have to make the utensil bigger. In a spiritual point of view. Physically, what you do is you say, you know what, that cup is too small. Like when you're putting the food away after Shabbat, you want to put it in the fridge. You fit it into this, it doesn't fit. So what do? You take a bigger thing, you put into another one, right? Which means you make the kli bigger, and that allows. So what is the kli that is holding a person's Torah knowledge? I'll give you a hint. It's not the brain. Yirat shamayim. A person's awe. When a person appreciates that the Torah is here to make me a better person, to change my behavior, right? Then it's going into their heart, and what they're doing is they're increasing their Yirat Shamayim. And then they can have more Torah because their utensil is bigger. When a person is not allowing their utensil to be bigger, or doesn't have Yirat Shamayim, doesn't have awe of God, then the Torah they're learning is better not to learn. That's why it says a person who teaches Torah to an individual that does not have proper behavior, it's like throwing a stone to the idol. Why? Because now he's going to have a lot of Torah knowledge, but his behavior is not going to change. So what's going to happen? He's going to continue being bad. Now, we have a concept of mitoch shelo lishma, ba lishma. There's a concept of lishma. What does lishma mean? How would you translate that? For the sake of?
For the sake of the thing.
Look at the word lishma with a not dagesh, called a hey, a feminine possessive. Learns Torah l'shem shelah, for her name. Wow. Thought Judaism was a sexist religion. Holy moly. I guess not. Lishma means what? Shem shelah. It's a contraction. Mashma. What does that mean? What is her name? If it was, it would be Lishmo.
Who's the her?
Ah, who's the her? The her is the Shekhinah, the feminine aspect of God, the feminine aspect of God. And what name of God corresponds to that feminine aspect? Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud. And that's why we have a pasuk before a person prays Shmona Esrei. That's Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Agiti Latecha. It's not Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's not the pasuk. Master. Baal, as the Ashkenazim say, Bala boss, the husband of the boss. Yes, very good. That's what you're trying to get at. Very good. I got it. Okay? But what do we understand from here? Because who controls the shefa that is received? It's the woman, the Shekhinah. When we go to Bet Knesset and we have 10 men show up in shul, what is there? The Shekhinah. What does that do? That allows the tefillot to be going to the Shamayim. When the Shekhinah is not there, because there's machloket, because there's all kinds of others, no seder, there's no organization, the Shekhinah disappears, and what happens? The prayers go nowhere. The way through is with the Shekhinah. And that's why if we look in the next couple of parashot, we're going to be building the Mishkan. Yes, we're going to be building the sanctuary. Asu lemikdash v'shachanti betocham. Make for me a sanctuary, and I will b'shachanti. What word is that? Shachanti. What does it sound like? Shekhinah. Make me a mikdash. Make me a designated holy place, and I will have my feminine presence amongst you. V'shachanti betocham. The Shekhinah will be amongst you, or inside you. Betocham is inside you, plural.
People that are passionate about it have that. So how do you
That everything.
How do you make a person have that?
Great question. You guys are asking good questions. Everything's about passion.
Because instead of
when people are too intellectual, they're not passionate.
They have to have the love for it, like the Shekhinah first, in order to be very. I don't know.
I'll tell you a beautiful thing that's taught by Rav Soloveitchik, Zichron Tzadik Livracha. It says, Shema beni musar avicha, al titosh torat imecha. Listen, my son, to the instruction of your father. Do not uproot the Torah of your mother.
Those are Rambam's words, right?
It's a pasuk. It's Mishlei. It's Mishlei. What does this mean? The father gives musar. What is musar? Instruction. The father tells the child what to do. That's what Rav Soloveitchik says. What is the mother's job? Primarily to instill the love. That's correct. To instill the love. When the mother instills the love in the child, they will have that practice their entire life. And how does the mother instill the love? It starts with breastfeeding, if a person can. Yes? I mean, when I was born, the doctors thought they were real smart. They're going to do something different than 3,000 years. They had formula babies. I was a formula baby because they discouraged, we got formula, it's so much better. Nowadays, that's not the case. Nowadays, we recognize formula, schmormula. You give, if she can breastfeed, that is the best. Because what happens when the mother is breastfeeding? This is the brilliance of the creation. When the mother is breastfeeding, what is she doing? There is eye contact. First of all, he can hear the heartbeat, and there's heartbeat. Breasts are over the heart, and that's the goal, is to teach the child the concept of love. The first thing is for the child to learn how to receive love. Many people don't receive love well. Okay? Receive love. And then the goal over the course of life is, instead of being on the receptacle part only, one has to be on the giving part. Okay. Baruch Hashem. Probably been a lot better if I would have had fun. I mean, look at Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was a child, the Midrash says, refused to nurse from the Egyptian women to the point where he was going to die. He only would nurse from his mother. The greatest Jew that ever lived only accepted milk from his mother.
By instinct, he was 3 months old.
He wasn't, yeah, well, first of all, for the first 3 months she was giving him, right? So for those 3 months, he had that eye contact every single time she fed him. And then what happens? Now he goes on the river. Bitya might have wanted to be his mom, but that was before the days, couldn't do hormonal stuff and that kind of stuff. She has nothing to go. So what you do in those days? You got a wet nurse. Women made money when they were pregnant, that they would also nurse babies. What happened if a mother couldn't nurse? Right? Let the kid die? No, they didn't have breast pumps and all that kind of stuff. So thank God she has 2, so 1 for each. I don't know, right? So what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu refused to nurse. And that's when Miriam went and said, can I bring you someone to nurse this baby? Because this baby's not going to accept an Egyptian. She didn't say that. She didn't have to say that.
When a woman gets pregnant, sometimes her milk changes if she's pregnant with
another child?
With another child, like depending on whether it's a girl or a boy.
Okay.
So that's what happened to me. My milk changed and my baby
doesn't want it. Okay, then it's time for a bottle. Okay.
It doesn't apply nowadays.
It does apply. It took time for that. Most women don't get. Another wonderful thing about God's design is generally when women are nursing for the first month or two, with not everyone. I hear you. Okay, so it's a unique situation. Okay, but generally, how does it work? Right. Works like that. Now, it's not doesn't mean if he didn't want a nurse, then he was done. He had everything he needed. He learned how to receive love, and now his job is to learn how to give it. That's all. But we see the role of the feminine, very important. You make a sanctuary, and I will have my feminine dwell amongst you, because the feminine is the entrance way for the Shamayim. Just like all the Shefa comes to the Shamayim ultimately through the Shekhinah, through the Malchut, through the feminine, right? All the Tefillot, all the Rukok through the Malchut up to the Shamayim. So how is Menashe? What happened with Menashe? He didn't have Yirat Shamayim. He didn't have awe of God. Okay? When did Menashe get awe of God? Lahavdil, I'll give you another example. If you think about non-religious Israeli culture, kid goes, doesn't learn any Tanakh, it was taught to them like it was another subject in school, right? They may have learned a little bit about some of the stories of David and things like that. They have some familiarity. They know what Shabbat is, okay? But they have no Yirat Shamayim. They're not being taught, or they're being told not to have Yirat Shamayim. It's not cool, whatever it is. So all the Torah they learn is just subject matter. It's like the different math, social studies, and then there's Torah. Then they go to the army for 3 years. Everything goes out well. What do they do after they finish the army? Now they go on a trip. Good old days, they went to India, they went to Thailand. Why are they doing that?
Looking for soul searching.
They're looking.
Meaning to life.
They're looking for meaning. They just spent 3 years in the army. Maybe they shot some people or whatever. They realize that their life, in the army is not exactly a picnic. And now they want to experience the world. So they go to these strange Thailand, India, all this Tibet. Why are they going there? Because it's a Jewish soul that is searching for the truth. And what do Chabad do? They're in Thailand and in India and all these places. And when they want to have a Shabbat, because they're not in Israel anymore, so they realize that this is, if I want to experience cultural Judaism, I got to go to the Chabad house. So they go to Chabad for Shabbat. And then every now and then a Chabadnik is able to talk to them and say, what the hell are you doing here? You want to have spirituality? Open up the book that you've been ignoring for the past 21 years. I don't know how successful they are. I'm sure they're a little bit successful. I just think about all the Israelis. I said this in the class last week also. In Israel, they never set foot in a synagogue. Maybe on Kippur, they came for Ne'ilah and Shofar and maybe Kol Nidrei, and that's it. Right? Kol Nidrei. Otherwise, they don't set foot in the shul. They may be fasting, but they don't set foot in the shul. Now what they do, they come to America. They come to America because they want to make a living. They hear that there's gold in the streets of America, all that kind of stuff. They don't want to pay 70% taxes over there, so they're happy to pay 50% living in New York, okay? So what happens? Quickly they realize something. What do they realize? No, even more dramatic than that. They realize...
No, when you're further away from...
Yeah,
you kind of look for connection.
Why are they looking for... Okay, if you have your average Israeli walk into a Reform synagogue, they walk out. If they walk into a conservative synagogue, they walk out, generally, especially Sephardim. When they're going to synagogue, they want it to be like when my grandfather took me once to shul on Shabbat, even though I didn't want to go. I don't want to see a woman rabbi. I don't want to see a woman reading the Sefer Torah. And I certainly don't want to see an organ with a bunch of kids dressed up like Christian children singing songs. So what they realize is that if they don't connect here, their children will marry Gentiles. It's that blunt. People who grow up in Uzbekistan, people who grew up in Brooklyn or New York, we already know inherently the risk when you're surrounded by a Gentile culture. Jingle bells, jingle bells. The first time they hear that is when they come here. I sing jingle bells, nobody knows what I'm talking about, right? We're surrounded by the Gentile culture. And there are some things about it that are very good and some things about it that are very bad. But the one thing we don't want is our grandchildren to be Gentiles. What does that mean? I got to make sure that my son understands what it is to go to synagogue. That's how he connects. I got to make sure he's putting on tefillin, which means if I'm smart, I can't wait till he's 13 years old and say, you got to put on tefillin today. And then he turns around and says, Dad, you've never put on tefillin on your life. So what does he realize? As soon as he has a boy, that's what it really is, because the girl, at least you guarantee for another generation. What happens? He says, oh my God, I got to put on tefillin. I got to pray every day. I got to start going to shul because otherwise I want to make sure that when my son sees that he will want to be connected also, and then he won't bring home a shiksa. That's the reality. Okay. How much more time do I have? I'll do another 10, 15 minutes. I'll stop. Et emati ashalach lefanecha. God says, I will send my fear ahead of you. They should not be fearing us. They should be fearing our God, the God. That's why the Palestinians have a great time. That's why the Muslims have a great time. Because we're making them fear us. Right? That's what we're doing. They're fearing our tanks and our planes and our guns. We need to have it a different way to fight. Not all, do you see how Gaza looks? It looks like a devastated wasteland. Do you know why? It's not because of Tzahal, and it's not because America is giving 1,000-pound bunker bombs. That's not the reason. The reason is because our God is God. Your God is false. Your religion is false. Does Netanyahu talk like that? No. We're fighting the wrong way. Yes, blow them, destroy, do what you got to do, go to the terrorists. But that you take credit for it? I'm not saying he does. But when you speak to them, you put the leaflets down. The leaflets should say, our God is going to vanquish you. Watch. Yud Ke Vav Ke is going to make Allah look like yesterday's news. No.
He's not
I don't see Allah anywhere in the Hebrew. Look throughout the entire. What does the word Allah in Hebrew mean? The word Allah in Hebrew, what does it mean? A curse.
In Hebrew?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, it's in the Torah.
In modern Hebrew?
It's in the Torah. Forget modern Torah. Who cares about modern Hebrew?
No, because we have modern Hebrew.
Allah. Okay? It's a curse. The word Allah. It's brought up in Sefer Dvarim. The word Allah means a curse. Now they pronounce it Allah with a L, so whatever it means. But in Hebrew, the word Allah, there is no Allah in Hebrew. The word Allah is a curse.
It is a curse because what they do is they curse with their, they blow up a place and they.
Okay, so let's understand. We are not fighting this war. Et emati ashalach lefanecha. God says to Joshua, to the people going to go into the land of Israel, what is he saying? I'm going to send the fear of me ahead of you. That's why you're going to win. Not because of the fear of you. You're a slave. The hamotiet kol ha'am, and I will kill all of them. Asher tavo bahem, when you come to them. Now, is God killing them when Joshua goes in? Is God doing the killing? Not exactly. But God's doing the killing. If we believe it, they'll believe it. By Yam Suf, we read it a couple of parashot ago. What happens? Shamu amim yirgazun. Why? Because all of Egypt died. And that was clearly 100% the hand of God. What did the Jewish people do? Nothing. We just walk through. What's the difference if you're walking through or if you're carrying a sword and you're killing them? No difference. Who's doing the killing? When they kill Jews, they are not saying, I killed a Jew. What are they saying? Allah is the one who killed that Jew. You want to fight your enemy? You fight them the way they fight you, psychologically. That we're not doing at all. And that's why we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Let's continue on. And the natati et kol oivecha elecha oref. What's going to happen? And when the goyim see that you're coming in my name to kill them, what are they going to do? They're going to turn around and all you're going to see is the back of their neck. That's oref. Oref is the back of the neck because they're going to be running. Let's skip a little bit. Now God says, I'm not going to throw them out all in one shot. Because what's going to happen if I throw them out at one shot, then the land is going to be bereft of people, and that's not good. The land has to have people in it. So you're going to do this in stages. That's what God is saying. And how many? I'm not going to get rid of them in one, because God can make them all die in 3 seconds, right? No big deal, right? He's going to give you 7 years. 7 years. That's how long Joshua took to conquer the land. Unfortunately, he didn't conquer all of it, which created lots of problems later on. Then it continues on. It says like the Lo tichrot lahem v'lelohehem brit. Do not make a covenant with them and their gods. What does that mean? Making a covenant with them, making a peace treaty with them, that's true. What do you mean with the gods? When you make a covenant with them, you're making a peace treaty. You're making a covenant with their God. Which means what? No covenants, no peace treaties. The solution to the Canaanites is death. That's it. Or get out. That's the solution. That was the solution 3,000 years ago. That's a solution now too. Lo yeshivu. This is from last week's parasha. Lo yeshivu be'artzecha. Do not allow them to dwell in your land. 1 second. Why? Pen yachatiu otecha li. Because then they're going to cause you to sin to me. Because what's going to happen? Ki ta'avod et Elohehem. You're going to worship their gods. And there will be a stumbling block for you. How do we worship their gods? We adopt their culture. That's another thing, that we adopt their culture. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to read a halakha for you. Sorry? What's that?
The way we speak, the way we listen to music.
Let's see how we adopt their culture. You ready for this? I'm going to read you halakha from the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch also brings this halakha. It says like this. One second. Why I had it here? Okay.
Actually, we as Bahamas also adopted the Muslim culture. Yeah, I'm just thinking that back in the times, that's what we did. But here, I feel like
I don't know how much of it is from them. I think a lot of it
was from us.
Okay. Okay. So the Rambam, in his amazing organization of the halakha, he's talking about the concept of tzedakah, charity. And in the laws of tzedakah, he puts the concept of pidyon shivuyim. What is pidyon shivuyim? When someone is taken into captivity, paying a ransom to rescue them. Money. This is not something that was foreign to the Jewish people over the past 2,000 years. I promise you. Okay? This was not an uncommon event. Yeah.
Specifically paying ransom, not getting them out anyway.
Let's see what the halakha is. Okay? And this is from the Gemara flat out. En podin et hashivuyim beyoter al demehen. We do not redeem Jewish captives for more money than we should, which means whatever their value is, again, human life is infinitely valuable. So there's an unlimited amount of value that can be associated to that. Does that mean that we have to give them $20 million for every one of them? He's just talking here money. We'll get to that in a second. Okay? You are forbidden from the halakha. The Shulchan Aruch brings this. Forbidden from the halakha to overpay for this mitzvah of tzedakah. Now, the Gemara brings two reasons. The Rambam only brings one. The Gemara says there's two reasons. One reason is because what's going to happen? You're going to end up making the congregation poor. Because if they're going to want 10 million for each one, that comes out of the kupat tzedakah. What is that going to mean? That we're going to have a lot of homeless Jews. So you can't overspend. You can't have a $36 trillion deficit and be everybody's rescue in the world. That's ridiculous. Even in a situation of pidyon shvuyim, you're not allowed to overpay. That's not the reason the Rambam brings. Here's the reason the Rambam brings. Because what's going to happen? If you pay an exorbitant ransom, they're going to realize, oh my God, this is a business, and they're going to do it again and again and again and again. That's the Rambam's answer. He even says that we don't make efforts to rescue shvuyim. Why? Because if you rescue some of them and not all of them, first of all, it's going to be harder to rescue the other ones because they're going to increase the defenses and all that kind of stuff. And they may torture the people that are left. This is all called tikkun olam. The Torah doesn't give a limit to how much money we're supposed to spend to rescue hostages. Torah doesn't give a limit. The rabbis came and gave a limit, tikkun olam, which means for the benefit of all, which means while tzedakah has an unlimited amount, a person is not allowed to give more to make themselves into a poor person. Now, there are exceptions to this. If it's a big Talmid Chacham, like when they paid a lot of money to ransom one of the Rebbes, okay, that's different. If it's that, you can make exceptions on that because you know what? You're not going to, what, they're going to find another Talmid Chacham? You don't want to, the regular people is what we're talking about. The Talmid Chacham is different because that's rare. There's another exception made when it comes time for end of the war. We switch hostages at the end of a war. That's different because that's the end of the war. Some people say if it's wartime, then of course you rescue hostages and of course you pay hostages. Why? Because they're already taking hostages. It's not like it's a business, it's war. That's the business of war. So in peacetime, you do not pay ransom, exorbitant amount. Now, this is talking about money. What about a life for a life? Now, I will confess right now that one Jew is worth every one of them. Every one of them. From a value point of view, one Jew is worth all of them put together. But we're not talking about a value. If we extend, and by the way, there are posting that talk about this. I don't have time to go through this. A life for a life is one thing. A life for 600, that's something else. And then you have to say to yourself, money, okay, if we switch money, money doesn't kill people. You have to do something with money to kill people. You are taking people out of prison who are in prison for killing people. And you're switching 100 of them for one. And if we extend it even further, a dead body, of course, we want every person to have a Jewish burial. We are giving murderers and terrorists for dead bodies. How does that calculation work? That's uniquely Israeli, unfortunately. That's their culture. And some write that if it's a soldier, since the government sent that soldier there, okay, they have an obligation to return that soldier. So maybe there's an exception if they're soldiers. So we understand that this is not straightforward. And let me give you another piece of halakha. If they're soldiers, then the government is the one that sent them in to fight. So therefore, there may be an obligation to pay exorbitant amounts to take them out.
In this particular case, they're not going to take money.
I'm going to read you from Chacham Ovadia Yosef in the last book that he wrote, as far as I know. Is this book here? It's about Terumot and Ma'asrot in Chazon Ovadia. It was published in 2013, which that later that year is when he died. I think this is the last book that he actually wrote. I'm going to read you halacha. Ha'ir Azah. What city is that? Gaza City. Dina kichutz la'aretz. Gaza, its halachic is like outside the land of Israel. Uperot hagedolim ba, and fruits that grow there, piturim mitrumot unmaasrot. We are not obligated to give truma and maaser for fruit that is grown in Gaza. Why? Why?
In response to a specific question.
Let me just finish the next thing that a person is going to ask, and we'll have the answer for that right away. Umikol makom, nevertheless, he says, Yisrael hadarimba, Jews that live there, obviously this time they weren't living there anymore, enam tzrichim la'asot yom tov sheni shel galuyot. I will. They don't have to keep 2 days of Yom Tov. So again, we're saying two opposite things. So how do we understand this? And he explains this on the bottom in detail. Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galuyot is a minhag, a custom. How do customs work? People have a custom. It's a custom that's accepted by the rabbis. That's the custom. So if people have been living in Gaza for 300-400 years, and it was determined that in Gaza they only keep 1 day of Yom Tov, then what does that mean? They only keep 1 day of Yom Tov. But that does not give it, that custom does not give it the power or the holiness, the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. What gives land holiness of the, what makes certain areas like Gaza not Eretz Yisrael, which means no Terumot and Ma'asrot? And what makes other places, yes, you have to give Terumot and Ma'asrot. That's what the rabbi just said. Strange.
What was the big problem with
Strange.
when Gaza was given
uprooting Jewish communities? How about this? Maybe we shouldn't have had Jewish communities there in the first place.
They were.
I know, but maybe that was a bad idea. Maybe if they would ask the rabbis would say, you know what? Why don't we spend time conquering Yehudah and Shomron first? What was the mistake we made in the first temple period? Because you know what? If we don't learn from history what happens, we repeat it. So what happened? Joshua was unable to conquer all the land. There are reasons. And then what happened? David also did some conquering. David was a warrior. And David conquered Syria up until right below Damascus. Okay? But because David, this he says in the bottom, because David conquered Syria before he conquered all the rest of the land that belonged to the land of Israel, that never received the holiness of the land of Israel. What is Gaza called in the Torah? Is it called Eretz Canaan? No. It's called Derech Eretz Plishtim. Plishtim. Are they Canaanites? Hold on, before we get to the Palestinians, let's look at the history. Where are the Plishtim descended from? Are they descended from Canaan? No. They're descended from Ham, okay, but not from Canaan. Remember, Canaan was the fourth son of Ham. Noah cursed Ham. Why? No. Noah cursed Canaan. Why? Because Ham prevented Noah from having a fourth son, either by castrating, whatever he did. Okay, so because Ham prevented Noah from having a fourth son, Noah cursed Ham's fourth son, whose name was Canaan. He had 3 other children. Plishtim, from the Torah's time, it says this in Breshit flat out in Parashat Noah, come from another one of the sons of Ham. They're not cursed, the Plishtim. What was the problem with the Plishtim? It has a very strange term it says about them. They came from 2 different fathers. How's that possible? How's that possible? How's it possible? Plishtim came from 2 different fathers. Doesn't say 2 different mothers. We should, how do you come from 2 different fathers?
That's not possible.
One person coming from 2 fathers. How does that work? 23 plus 23 plus 23 is those too many chromosomes. That's 2 different people from 2 different sperm in the same father. Okay? There have been rare, very, very, very rare situations where you have fraternal twins that are there's 2 different fathers. Promiscuous mother. That's not a Jewish mother, of course. Okay?
Well, what's to say that that's not what they're talking about?
That's not what it's talking about. Because what does the Torah say? Watch this. Oh, you're going to love it. It's even better. You're going to love this. Okay? One second. Uknaan yalad Sidon bechoro. That's the bechor of Canaan is Sidon. Okay, before we get to Canaan, let's look at Ham. Okay, here we go. It tells about the sons of Ham, and then it says, Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the son of Ham. Mitzrayim, that's why it's called Mitzrayim. Yalad et Ludim, vet Anamim, vet Lehavim, vet Natuchim. These are 4 other children from Mitzrayim. Vet Patrusim, vet Kasluchim, asher yatzu misham Plishtim. Vet Kaftorehem. I'll read the pasuk in English, okay, so everybody can understand. It says over here, and Mitzrayim begot Ludim, Anamim, Nahamim, and Naftuchim. Those are 4 names. Patrusim and Kasluchim, whence the Philistines came from, and Kaftorim. So look at Rashi. What does Rashi say? That these 2 sons, Patrusim and Kasluchim, they shared wives. They did wife swapping. They had that situation, where everybody takes a different key, goes to a different house on Friday night. So therefore, Plishtim could be from both because we don't know who the father is, because they were swapping wives. This is Shlomo Melech said, "En chadash tachat hashamesh." There's nothing new under the sun. Okay, and he means that. It's totally true. Okay, so here it is, and Rashi says it's flat out they were sharing wives. So Plishtim of now, those are the Philistines. Philistines are descendants of Ham. Okay, so that's the Plishtim. We were unable to conquer, except we did conquer the land of the Philistines in the time of David HaMelech. But because he did not conquer all the land of Israel, it never received the Kedusha. It had the Kedusha in the time of the first temple, but when the first temple was destroyed, the Kedusha was gone. When Ezra Sofer came back in the second temple period, and they occupied land in the land of Israel, that received Kedusha for all eternity. Gaza was not conquered by Ezra HaSofer. So therefore, Gaza never received the Kedusha. Therefore, there's no Trumot and Masrot from Gaza. Therefore, Avacham Avadia over here says it's Din vis-a-vis Trumot and Masrot is like Chutz La'aretz. And according to some opinions, what makes the land of Israel holy? Is it the holiness of the land of Israel? That's the reason you have to take Trumot and Masrot? Or is it the fact that there are Trumot and Masrot that make the holiness of the land of Israel? It's the latter one. What makes the land of Israel holy is Trumot and Masrot, the mitzvot hatluyot ba'aretz, the mitzvot that are only done in the land of Israel. That's what makes it holy land. No, the fact that the mitzvah is done there, that's what makes it holy land.
If the mitzvah isn't done, that land is not holy.
That's why Gaza is not holy. Gaza is not holy. Why?
Israel.
Because there's no trumot and maasrot that are done there.
If
So
there's
it's
no
not-
Torah Masot done in the land of Israel proper, is the land of Israel not considered?
Okay, there were trumot and maasrot done in the Second Temple period. So that, even though now, so once it was done in the Second Temple period, that kedusha is there forever. But the kedusha of Gaza is not, because in the Second Temple period, there were no Jews living there growing fruit and trumot and maasrot.
Can it become holy? Let's say-
Yes, it can when we kick out all the garbage that's there now.
When you design the temple?
And that's why it's not such a bad idea what our president is suggesting.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Not for no reason.
It's not such a bad idea. First of all, even if we take out the Torah, it's a great idea because no one's ever thought about it before. You know, wow, I could have had a V8. Holy moly, what a brilliant idea to make, Trump Gaza Plaza. Wow, holy moly, and make it it's an amazing idea. And the best part about the idea is he's resurrecting something that a wonderful rabbi said about 40 years ago that was ostracized by the name of Meir Kahana, Zichron Tzadik Livracha, who said that is the solution. It's called transfer. Back then, that was a fringe opinion because we had Mayor Shimon Peres and Oslo. We're going to make peace with these people. What does the Torah say? No peace treaties. You can make a peace treaty with Egypt. Why? Because that's not in the land of Israel. You can make a peace. And here, let's just say for argument's sake, this is not the land of Israel. These are nice neighbors? No. So sooner or later, what do you got to do with these neighbors? You kill them or kick them out. That's the only choices you have.
What about the ones that live in Jerusalem, split?
They're next.
They have the whole mosque.
Those.
You can't kick them out. How you can, they have their mosque there.
Okay. I'm going to give you a wonderful solution. Here's a wonderful
But that's
solution.
where the Beit Hamikdash is.
The next time bombs are sent from someplace like Yemen or Iran, and they happen to be landing in Jerusalem, just bomb the mosque.
And then there's going to be
Ooh,
world war.
okay, they hate us anyway. We committed genocide. Do you know that? We committed genocide in Gaza. You know what? If you're accusing us of committing genocide, let's show them what it looks like. Let the blood run in the streets. Okay, I'm not saying we should do that. I think transferring that is a better idea. But this idea that he has is that's the correct one.
Yeah, they can't be in Israel.
Oh, it's going to happen peacefully.
There is no two-state solution.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Because you know what the real answer is? Nobody cares about the Palestinians. Nobody. Not even, first of all, Saudi Arabia does not care about the Palestinians. Do you know why they don't want them? Do you know why they don't want them?
The only problem. The only question.
First of all, they're not Arabs. They're a mishmash of Turks and Cretes, and they are a hodgepodge of all the garbage of the Middle East. They're like the garbage that rises to the top of the water. They're the garbage of the Middle East.
The reality is that a lot of the Arab nations, they're purists. They don't like mixtures. And when they see these people who you can't trace their lineages, they don't want them. They don't
Okay, I have a
want
great idea. We take the refugee camps and we have them be in the Saudi Arabian desert. If they're Arabs, they like that weather. That's what they live in. If they're Turks, send them to Turkey. Turkey seems to be like, whatever. They do not belong as our neighbors. And you know what? With all due respect, Mexico and Canada and Colombia and Venezuela are learning very quickly that there's a new sheriff in town. And guess what? So will the Middle East learn there's a new sheriff in town. So will Europe. When Macron came to visit the president, there was no president there. Netanyahu comes, he comes out, he greets him, gives him a handshake. The president of France comes, he doesn't give a handshake. You know why? Because France is immaterial. These guys can't fight.
It's only for the next 4 years, and then what?
I don't know. We're good. We'll worry about the 4 years that are here now.
I'm a little confused
Why are you confused?
because you said the Palestinians and the Arabs, like they're different.
Palestinians are not, many of the Palestinians are not Arabs. Let's put it this way. The Arabs living in Saudi Arabia do not want them because they're not Arabs.
What about the ones that are living in Israel? The Arabs.
Okay, so the one you're asking about the ones in Yehuda v'Shomron, right?
I mean, I don't know.
Yehuda and Shomron, there's a very simple solution to that. Okay, I think everybody realizes in the world that the two-state solution is done.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying.
Right?
the Jews-
So what's the one-state solution? So if there's no two-state solution, three states you don't need either. There's the one-state solution. What's the one-state solution? That's right. Why isn't you see what Trump did yesterday? It's not called the West Bank anymore in official American document. It's called Judea and Samaria. We don't even realize the biblical things that are happening right now. Not officially by the State Department ever. Yesterday. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got a cabinet full of people. Take Hegseth. There's a video of Hegseth in 2017 where he was in Jerusalem in the King David Hotel giving a speech. And the last 3 minutes of his speech, he's wondering why there can't be a temple.
He's wondering.
I kid you not. He's now the Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense is the third in line. Fourth in line. President, Vice President, Speaker of the House, Secretary of Defense. Not saying there should be any problem with succession, but okay. So this is a very powerful position. He's an evangelical Christian. Yes. Yes. So I don't think we're appreciating when he made the Abraham Accords, I mean, does anybody think that was, he would have gotten a Nobel Prize if it wasn't Trump. Okay, this is a Torah class. Why am I bringing this up? What personality in the Tanakh would be most like Trump? God forbid.
No,
David HaMelech?
but I heard that.
David is a Jew.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, what was the
Trump, not a Jew. Sorry, not a Jew.
No, the personality.
No, because
It's
Yitro
about-
converted. Trump's not converting.
Not about- He is genetic.
If you look through the Tanakh, there is a certain Gentile who 150 years before he was born, according to some opinions, in Yeshaya is referred to as Meshiho, which means his anointed one. Now, let's not lose terminology here. There is the Mashiach. The Mashiach has to be a Jew, has to be a descendant from David, okay? Has to be Shomer Torah Mitzvot. I am not saying that I think it's ridiculous people think he's Mashiach. Not the case. But there is a personality in the Torah, a Gentile, who was born a Gentile and died a Gentile in the Tanakh, okay? That is called by Yeshaya Meshiho 150 years before he's born, before the individual I'm talking about is born. No. Antoninus is not mentioned in the Tanakh.
He's born
Okay,
in line with Israel.
we'll finish up shortly, okay? We're coming on the holiday of Purim, yes? What happens in Purim? We have a party in the beginning of the Megillah. That's how the Megillah starts off, a party, yes? What was the party for? It says in the Megillah, because he conquered 127, blah, 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 right? That's why he had this party, right? Masechet Megillah asks the question, why is it that the Jewish people were worthy of being destroyed in the time of the Megillah? And what's the answer? Because they had benefit from that seudah. And it wasn't because it wasn't kosher and the wine wasn't badatz. Everything was badatz. What was the problem with that seudah? What was the reason? Achashverosh, Gam Vashti Hamalka Aseta Mishteh. I did. The temple was in the process of being built. Vashti, who was the descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the temple, went to her husband and said, "You're a moron. Why are you allowing them to build the temple?" And he stopped the building of the temple because they miscalculated the 70 years. Because Jeremiah in his prophecy says the temple will be destroyed for 70 years and then it will be rebuilt. So they miscalculated and they thought that the 70 years had elapsed. That's why Achashverosh had the party, because the temple was not built and the Jewish people participated with that. That's where Haman comes into play. Now, Achashverosh became king when the temple was already in the process of being built. Who gave the Jewish people permission to build the temple in the second temple period?
Koresh?
Right! Koresh. And Koresh in Yeshaya is referred to as Koresh Meshiho. Now, what does that mean? He's anointed, he's a king. He's functioning as God's hand.
Who was Korah?
He was a Gentile king of Persia.
This was after Ahasuerus?
Before Achashverosh. And he's the one. So you look at the end of the Tanakh. What does the end of the Tanakh say? Whoever would like to go and build the temple, let him go and build the temple. That's at the end. You look at the last pasuk of Divrei Hayamim. What does it say? Whoever wants to go up and build the temple, go up and build the temple. It wasn't a Jew then. Why would we think it's going to be a Jew now?
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Now let's think about something else. There are two holidays where we have something to read about the story of that holiday. On Sukkot, do we read a story about Sukkot? No. On Kippur, do we read a story about Kippur? We read the Sefer Torah, but there's no story. Rosh Hashanah, do we read a story? Shavuot, do we read a story about we read in Sefer Torah about Matan Torah? We don't talk about it all night long. Pesach, we have a mitzvah, v'higata lebincha bayom hahu lemor, the Haggadah. And Purim, we have Mikra Megillah. Both of those are commemorating two episodes. What were those episodes? No. Redemption. Egypt, the redemption from Egypt, right? And with the second temple, the redemption from Bavel, from the destruction, yes? The redemption in Egypt, we read about it every single year in the Haggadah because we want our children to be very familiar with the story. Why is it so? The Torah says we have to do this, right? But why is the Torah telling us we have to be familiar with the Passover story? What's an underlying reason that maybe nobody thought about? Thank you so much. That's great. What's the reason we need it now?
For Emunah,
More.
Torah says you're gonna
Ki me'etzetecha me'eretz Mitzrayim er'enu. What I say in the beginning of the class. When we look at the Torah, what do we see? We're not just seeing what happened 3,000 years ago. We're seeing a blueprint of what's going to happen in the future. We want every child to recognize and know the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Why? Because the Exodus from Woodmere is going to look very similar.
even better, right?
60 times better. Now, what's another story of Exodus? The Megillah. What is the big difference between the Exodus story and the Megillah story? As you're reading the Exodus story, you see the outstretched hand of God. Ki biyad chazaka hotziacha me'eretz Mitzrayim. The hand of God. And in the Megillah, you don't see the hand of God. You don't even have God's name in the Megillah. What does that mean? There are different ways the redemption can happen. One way is like Egypt. In the beginning, it's always going to be with the redemption is going to be massive and the world's going to know about it. But there's another way it's hidden. Koresh is not even mentioned in the Megillah. You have to know the backstory. The Megillah is telling you a story of the redemption of the Jewish people where God doesn't appear to be active. But when you read the Megillah, what do you see? Every place God's hand. But what is he doing? He's in the background. So one is an open miracle. He's out there saying, Dam Tzfardea Kini Marov Dever Shchim Barat Chosh Makal, right? And then it's Yam Mitzrayim, the Yam Suf. And the other one, he's pulling the strings. Koresh here, Achashverosh here, Haman here. That's what's going on. So which one is it more like now, right now? It's more like the Megillah story. And I think if you look at Koresh and look what he did, Koresh's mistake was, the reason he had a very short reign is because God wanted him to not just allow the Jewish people to go, but to participate in the building of the temple. To financially participate, that he didn't do.
Wanted the Jews to financially participate?
Yeah, but that's not what God wanted. God wanted him to build. They destroyed it. They should help to build it. Maybe that would be very interesting now. I don't know. So I think things are setting themselves very interesting. To summarize, no covenants with enemies. You don't make a covenant with a squatter in your house. You kick them out. You don't make you know what? You want to live here for another year? It's okay, no problem. And not only is the squatter living in your house, but they're destroying it. And you live next door, by the way. You have a house right next door to the squatter. So you have your house, and he's in your house, another property right next door. And not only is he destroying your house and making it disgusting and unlivable, but he's throwing his garbage on your property. And he's throwing his dog waste on your property. And every now and then he shoots a gun through your window because he wants to hit you. What do you do in that situation? You just sit back and say, oh, okay, I'm going to make it. Can I go? Let me have a peace treaty with you? This is the stupidity of what's going on here. And then we trade. I'm not an Israeli, so I can't say what it's like to lose somebody like that. It's miserable. But what are we getting in return? We got Sinwar last time we did this. So you know what? If we get all the hostages out, and then we free all these Palestinian prisoners, and then we let them all get out, that's fine.
You don't think they know that?
I don't think they know it. They're stupid people.
If they all get out,
yeah,
it's not like they have a place to go.
I don't care. Why is that our problem? Why is their lack of a place to go our problem? When did they get? First of all, okay.
It's the same thing.
Whose problem is Gaza? Up until 1967, that was Egypt. Why is it not their problem now?
They understand the calamity.
I don't give a damn. You've used them for pawns for the past 70 years. It hasn't worked. Now you gotta rehabilitate, or you kill them. That's okay. Let the world accuse the Egyptians of genocide. We don't have to kill your garbage. You take out your own garbage. We don't have to take out your garbage for you. Keep your eyes open. Watch. And we are not studying it. We're not looking at the Tanakh properly. We're not looking at the Torah properly. We need to see all the hints of what's going on right now, every single time what we have here. And what's going to happen to people in the West Bank? It's very simple. Did you know that there is a Palestinian state already? Yes. Let them all go live over there. They're taking 2,000 children. Okay, let them take another 2,000, another 2,000, another 2,000. Just keep going. It's a very small river, the Jordan River, just right over there. We should not be living with these people. None of them. And you know what? Maybe we have to start realizing that, Jewish people can do manual labor. It's not the end of the world. Same problem in this country. All right, we'll stop with this. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen. We call that not politically correct. I just got to go to the restroom.